Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, I've had an epiphany of sorts. Maybe not an epiphany. Maybe this is kind of common sense. But finally, I get to run a game of Ubiquity tomorrow night, and the specific game I'm going to run is Desolation. And I chose that one because that's the first one that I got. And I thought this group might be burnt out on fantasy, but they said, no, no, that's good. Just bring that along. Of course, this is post-apocalyptic fantasy, so this is different, to say the least. Anyhow, I already talked about like, learning a new setting is hard. Made a couple of videos about that, or just talked about it a little bit. But I want to take this from a different angle, because as I've been preparing for this, I don't have a heck of a lot of time. Just things have been going on in my life, and you know, it's funny. Like I read this book, I read other books, and they don't grab me as much. And I'm not saying the game is bad. I'm not saying the setting is bad. That's not it. It's just I'm tired at the end of the day, and sometimes I'm reading them, and I'm like, well, I'm tired. I need to go to bed. And so I found out, something about myself, in the past, and it's reminding me of it now. As I'm preparing to run the game and to run just a small part of the setting. I'm really not that big of it, big part of it. And also, preparing to run the system. And I really want to put the system through its paces. I want to try out what combat's like. I want to try out what the magic system is like. I want to try out what some of the skill task resolution is like. I really want to have experience with it and kind of. So it's not going to be the most cohesive session. We're going to try the game out and see how it works. Anyhow, in both those cases, I'm finding it hard to commit a lot of this stuff to memory, and I realized it's part of it is due to my learning style, and part of it is just due to like I guess it's all my learning style. How about that? So let's see if you can relate. As I'm reading through this book, it's tough for me to sit there and remember like Ascandia and Caer Dern and all these other crazy names, because any setting has crazy names and all that sort of stuff. And I think to myself, well, gosh, when I've read novels, fantasy novels, science fiction novels, and whatnot, after I haven't had a hard time remembering the names of all the weird places and characters' names and whatnot. What gives? Well, that was through repetition, because if you recall, you start to read a book, you have no clue what the heck is going on. You can't remember these names, and then through a lot of repetition, you learn them. I had the experience of reading A Clockwork Orange one time, and if you know that book, it's got this quasi bizarre Russian English dialect and all these bizarre words thrown in, and I didn't realize till the end of the book there was an index at the end of the book that told you what all these words meant, and so through reading the book, I was actually able to guess what Moloko was, and the cutthroat Britva and all these other things, and Miglazis and all this other junk. So, and then I read it again, having some better knowledge of what those words meant. But still, I was able to figure it out. And same thing. You actually have to play in a setting for a while to remember all those names. I couldn't remember like Greyhawk and the Bone March and all that other stuff until I played for some time. And so same thing for the system. As I'm going through, and I'm made out all these kind of like little cheat things for us. I printed out some stuff from the PDFs I have of Leagues of Adventure, because the Ubiquity system is the Ubiquity system. So I'm gonna hand these out to my players because they're gonna help me as we run through this system. They're all pretty savvy people, so I like to have I like it to be a collaborative effort. I printed out the whole section on magic thing, and one of the characters whoever wants to play a sorcerer will have. So I've printed that out of the Desolation book as well. I learned, not only do I learn through repetition, but I learn by doing. As I've run through the system, mentally in my head, like it all makes sense. However, if you ask me right now, like exactly, how does sorcery work, and what are the steps to, resolving, combat or magic, or for like this particular type of skill, I'd have to look at a table or a chart for a second, and to a certain extent, that's just a discomfort level thing for me, because in the games that I'm used to, a lot of the if OSR D&D variants and whatnot, I don't need to look at no stinking book. I know what it is, and if I mess up, it's going to be by one, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. And so I'm very, very comfortable. I even had asked Runesinger a couple of questions, and one of them was on about just kind of like eyeballing things like monsters or whatever I was going to use, opponents. And he clued me into because I told him I can just eyeball something in like the systems that I'm used to, and I don't need to. I can look at it from once and know exactly how powerful it is. And if I want to create something, I know exactly what to what figures are the real important figures. So he told me, yeah, go look at the averages. That's going to be one of your biggest indicators of how tough something is. Look at the averages for a lot of stuff. That tells you how difficult things are and whatnot. And he gave me a couple other pointers. But the thing is, I haven't actually done it yet. So I learn a lot by doing. And this doesn't just apply to gaming for me. As I've gotten different jobs or different positions within the same job throughout my lifetime, I have what I like to call new jobitis. Whereas the first day that I go to this new job, I just want to go home. I decided, I've made a big mistake, and I like things to go back to the way they used to be. And in 2 weeks, I'm an old pro. It's just because I learn relatively fast. But, I'm okay as a theoretical learner, but most of my, actual real retention comes from doing and from repetition. So, when am I going to be really comfortable with a setting of desolation? Through repetition. When am I going to be really comfortable with the ubiquity system? Through repetition and actually by doing it. I don't know if any of you can relate, but that's my story today. And so, have a good one. So. I don't practice enough either anymore. Repetition, learn by doing. Got to get my chaps back.